Spider-Man, the greatest animated series you never saw, has been adapted to the big screen once again, and I have thoughts. And let's just get this out of the way from the start. Spoilers ahead for the people who care about spoilers. Spider-Man No Way Home is the latest film in the Spider-Man Homieverse from Marvel Studios. I'll admit that I'm not the biggest fan of this iteration of Spider-Man, so I wasn't exactly coming to the theater from the most optimistic point of view. My knee-jerk reaction to Spider-Man E.T. Phone Home? I enjoyed it for the most part. However, all of the preconceived notions and apprehensions I had about it beforehand were still proven to be true. How does that work?
I can explain. Let me explain.
Nowadays, big blockbuster movies live under a microscope. Casting decisions, on-set drama, creative staff coming and going. We're seeing the sausage get made in real time. It's just kind of how it is now, unfortunately. I wonder what it would have been like to come into this movie with no prior knowledge and actually be surprised by the returning characters from other Spider-Man movies. It would have been pretty wild. But that's not how things work because, the internet. So yes, in addition to the bad guys from both the Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man franchises, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield do indeed reprise their roles as Peter Parker in the film. I mean, can you imagine how much the fanboys would lose their shit if those two weren't in it? One shudders to think. But Sony has known what they were doing all along, of course. They just threw as much shit on the screen as possible to see what stuck and how many people they could drum up to go to the theaters. And for once, it kind of worked. The plot of Spider-Man: The Voyage Home can be summarized thusly. After the unearned reveal of Spider-Man's secret identity at the end of that Paris Vacation movie or whatever the fuck, Peter Parker's life is in turmoil. He conveniently dodges all legal troubles with some quick Netflix cameo exposition. Because we don't have time for the law in this movie, we need to get more Sony Pictures Spidey properties on screen pronto. Peter wants Doctor Strange to put the magic whammy on everyone and make them forget who he is. But because that little rascal likes talking a lot, the spell gets messed up, and instead, actors from previous Spider-Man films agree to come back for a decent payday. Villains team up, Spideys team up, the day is saved, people forget Peter Parker's identity. The details aren't important, honestly. My constant gripe with the Spidey Homieverse is that Tom Holland's Spider-Man can't stand on his own. He needs support from other recognizable, bankable characters. First it was Iron Man, and now it's heroes and villains from Spider-Man films past. After 6 film appearances in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I still don't really have much of an emotional attachment to this Spider-Man or his peoples. In truth, I was more affected by Aunt May's death in the Spider-Man PS4 game than I was in this particular film. Seriously though, that game's cool as hell. What did affect me, and I honestly can't believe I'm saying this, was Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker. I suppose it shouldn't come as that big of a surprise. Garfield is a talented actor, so he can actually do a decent job, when you detach him from a backwards-thinking Spider-Man reboot and a director who was only given the job because his last name was Webb. From the minute Garfield arrives on screen, he looks troubled, unkempt, and distracted. For those brave souls among us who actually sat through the disastrous sequel The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you may recall that the film ended with the death of Peter's girlfriend Gwen Stacy. Sony decided to recreate this infamous moment in the comics in a rather tasteless CGI glorification of web-induced spine cracking. Garfield's Peter is one who is haunted by past failures, the death of his girlfriend, and the implosion of his misguided franchise. It's a brilliant bit of meta storytelling that provides a redemption arc for a good actor who was put in some bad movies. He even gets to save the girl this time, a true moment of catharsis for the character and the audience. But mark my words, there will be a wave of revisionist history saying that the Amazing Spider-Man films are actually good. But don't let this confuse you. They are, in fact, not good. Don't forget that among other things, this asshole hipster Peter Parker promised a dying Dennis Leary that he would stay away from his daughter Gwen, then immediately turned around and said that the promises you can't keep are the best kind. LOL, sorry Gwen, you're dead. Don't kid yourself. These movies are bad. Tobey Maguire, the first Spider-Man, returns as an older, wiser man who, despite punching his girlfriend in the face 14 years ago, seems to have figured out how to make the web-slinging life work for him. It's a lot of fun to see all 3 Spider-Man play off of one another. That alone is worth the price of admission. I've argued before that MCU Spider-Man only fights villains who hold grudges against Iron Man. While that isn't the case here, he is fighting a whole slew of villains from other worlds who don't actually know this Peter particular Parker. Which kinda makes sense because MCU Spider-Man has really only had 2 villains thus far, one being dead and the other busy filming a Morbius cameo. Yes, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin does kill Aunt May, but having the final battle be Tom Holland's Spider-Man versus a different Spider-Man's arch nemesis feels a little weightless. But it's the first Spider-Man bad guy fighting the newest Spider-Man. Yeah, but that's just your brain working extra hard to justify this who's who of Spidey people as a logical plot. Again, with as many things that could go wrong here, the movie actually is pretty fun. What's not fun is the return of J.K. Simmons as Alex Jonesified Jameson. What an absolute waste of a talented actor and a scene-stealing character. In the Sam Raimi films, he was a mustachioed cartoon in human form. This J. Jonah Jameson, however, is a joyless, purposeless sourpuss that exists just to scream at Spider-Man on TV. Sure. Fine. Whatever. The Iron Boy of it all still colors much of this Spider-Man for me. While Spider-Man's Uncle Ben replacement is not actually mentioned by name, Tony Stark and the upgraded Platinum card status provided therein is still a big factor in this saga. In an effort to save these villains from their ultimate multiversal fate, Peter escapes with them to the condo of Tony's former manslave Happy Hogan. How fortunate for them that Happy has inherited so many nice techno toys from his former master. In the comics, the Parker Luck refers to Peter's constant down-and-out status. He's Charlie Brown in spandex. But when you have a rich dead uncle sending you technology from beyond the grave every movie, you're hardly the underdog. In Spider-Man Homeward Bound, Peter has a magic 3D printer that can produce life-saving cures. In Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, Aunt May didn't even have $300 to her name to open up a checking account.
Come on!
And yes, by the end of the film, it would seem that Tom Holland is finally that down-and-out Peter Parker, cut off from family, friends, and more than likely a social security number. Iron Boy is dead. Long live Spider-Man. All it took was 6 feature films. If you've gotten this far and are still thinking, you're full of shit, you disembodied voice, this is the best Spider-Man movie of all time. First, I thank you for watching my entire video while stewing in your rage. Second, you will never convince me that Spider-Man No Home for Old Men is more than the happiest accident Sony and Disney could hope for. And finally, this film belongs to Andrew Garfield. He is the star of the film. And I'm happy for him.
Cheers.